Good evening, everyone. I am the Mad Computer Scientist. On this channel, I discuss math, computer science, and technology topics that are of interest to me. If you are new here, please make sure to hit that like button, be sure to comment, and be sure to subscribe. If you subscribe, be sure to hit that notification bell. And this is my special 128 subscriber stream. I know most people do it at 100. I probably should have waited until a little bit later, but I thought we would do another one again when that number doubles because, well, why not? Base our subscriber streams on the nearest powers of 2. I'm not sure how long this is going to be. I actually did have a plan, but give me a second here because I think one of the things we're going to do is start on the data science project I wanted to do. And one of the things that's going to require is, believe it or not, downloading a program called Anaconda, which will let me do a Jupyter Notebook on my computer. For those of you who don't know what Jupyter Notebook is, it's a web server Python thing that is popular for data science applications. Give me a second here. I'm going to share the screen. In this case, we just need the window, and we're going to share my Firefox tab. So there we go. Now, installing Anaconda on Windows is fairly easy. It's a bit harder on Linux, depending on the distribution you have. And normally I would prefer to do programming on Linux because most of the tools for Linux are already there. Let's see, I do not want to create an account. I want to download. There we go, free download. Right, we're not going to give my real email address for this. Can we do this without giving my email address? Oh, we can skip registration. There we go. So we're going to download the 64-bit graphical installer for Windows. And typically in Linux, this is done via command line. I had to do this for one of my master's classes a little bit earlier. All right, while I'm doing that, let's talk about this channel a little bit. I'm sure some of you wondering how I came up with the name Mad Computer Scientist. Or maybe you're not. I do like playing on words a little bit. But in this case, I actually do have a point for choosing this name. The reason I chose Mad Computer Scientist has to do with what computer scientists have been up until this point. Computer science really hasn't had wide-ranging applications society-wide for the most part, because until the internet became widely popular, most applications were run on a personal computer. Now, it is true the internet has been around in some form or another since 1969, and most people don't realize that. The web was developed in the 90s, and when broadband became popular, the web took off in a big way. Before that, the equivalent of what we do on the web today would have been done via bulletin board systems that you dialed into. All right, so we have downloaded it, and now we're going to install. When the web did come up, it took off, and now companies and other people have found ways to make money off of it, and one of the things that has had a big impact on society is social media. And one of the problems I have with social media is the way content selection algorithms work. You may be asking, what is this problem? Well, you've probably heard other people say it, but I do notice that in my circle that I was one of the first to start it, but to be fair, there were people making this argument long before I realized that this was a problem. If you go onto Twitter, Google, or Facebook, you probably notice that Twitter, Google, and Facebook will show you the content they think you want. And they will show you mostly things you agree with. Now, for the most part, this does result in a better user experience, but the downside of this is if you react with only content you agree with, the algorithm works to show you only more content you agree with. This has an effect known as the filter bubble. Basically, this means that you are getting your own pocket of information where someone else might be getting an entirely different pocket. Now, the person who first came out with this idea wrote a book, oddly enough, called The Filter Bubble, and one of the things he points out is that doing this leads to the creation of echo chambers. where people get trapped in an echo chamber and they get further and further polarized. This is not as bad an idea as it first seems, because there are social media sites that do have a moderating effect because they don't use the same content selection algorithm. Reddit is a good example of this. But we cannot ignore that these social media sites, along with the Google search engine, have increased polarization in society. Now, that's not the only problem that's caused by the increase of technology. In the past few years, you may have noticed that AI has become a big thing. Now, a lot of people don't understand what AI really means, and a lot of people have come to associate a specific type of AI, namely the large language model and the art generators called generative AI, for the whole field of artificial intelligence. Now, all artificial intelligence means is that you are trying to simulate human intelligence. Every video game you've played has incorporated some very small artificial intelligence elements in it. Now, is the artificial intelligence in the video games impressive? No, it's not. In fact, I have written some AI for some games I've written, which I may post a link to at some point if you want to check them out. But the problem with large language models is that tech pro CEOs are basically overpromising the capabilities of it. And one of the things these could lead to is the displacement of jobs. In fact, I think we're seeing this partially happen, but I also think just because the capabilities are being overpromised, one of the things we'll see in the next year or so is these companies that have laid everyone off will soon find out that they need to hire all these people back because AI just isn't ready to take over all the tasks. In fact, if you're a programmer like I have, if you've ever used ChatGPT to try to generate code just to play around with it, you may have noticed that a lot of the code it generates doesn't in fact work. And another thing that comes up with large language models is large language models may in fact be unbiased for the most part, or at least the algorithm is. But we have something coming up in the background here, but that does not mean the data sets and the people who are training them are unbiased. The algorithm will just do what it's programmed to do, but the biases will come up based on its training data and what is in there. So this does not mean that ChatGPT is biased towards the left or right. And if you actually don't believe me, try to ask ChatGPT questions with a certain slant. Like try to ask ChatGPT to respond as someone who favors Trump, and it will do that. And if you ask ChatGPT to respond as someone who doesn't like Trump, it will do that as well. I think a lot of people are impressed with what programs like ChatGPT can do, so they're forgetting that ChatGPT is somewhat limited in what it actually can do. And are we actually adding the stage? Well, I had to close. Now that I've installed Anaconda, let me see if I can come up now. It should come up to a server, and we'll be resharing the screen shortly. Now, what ChatGPT can do is impressive, I will admit that. I like playing around with ChatGPT, and why is an instant... Oh, it is already running. Okay, where is it running, though? Here we are. All right. We will update Anaconda the Navigator. No, I don't. And all right, let's go over here. We will reshare. I should have realized this was going to happen, but okay. And come on. Oh, it. All right, there we go. So now we have Anaconda Navigator up again. Hello, David and Maraharu. So let's see. We need a Jupyter notebook. We're going to bring that up. So I forgot what I was saying because I've been trying to install software in the background as well. I do not need Notepad. I just need to go to Notebook. And it wants to bring that up. I really wish it would not do that. Huh. It's not redirecting me to an application like it should. That's weird. Instead, it's bringing up a notebook. So I guess I should have set up a virtual machine and done it on Linux like I intended to, and this would not have been a problem. Ideally, before you do stuff like this, you should have it set up beforehand. I don't know what the issue is here, but it does seem to be having issues. Environments. Learning. Oh, this is Anaconda Navigator. I don't know why it doesn't want to bring up a notebook for me. Is that because I don't have Jupyter Notebook installed? That might be it. All right, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Anaconda is not a program I like to deal with. If I were on my Linux machine, I would have had it installed properly. I will have to get it set up properly in the future for what I want to do, but we will do that offline. Yes, David Hodge, the YouTube algorithm is kind of irritating, but I also understand that these social media companies have done what they need to do to try to actually mitigate the problem of incorrect information. Because increasingly we have two different groups who live in two different realities, if you haven't noticed. Going back to the point about the tech bro CEOs, they, like the computer scientist, are rather enamored of what these programs can do, and to be honest, what these programs can do are impressive. I'm not going to say they're not. However, people don't understand that all they're designed to do is come up with human-sounding responses. And they do that by selecting a number of keywords based on the prompt you give it, and then going through a series of neural networks and using linear matrix algebra to choose what is statistically likely to be the next most likely word. All it does is predict the next most likely word in the text. And this is why, even if you train a model like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini on correct data, you will still sometimes get what is known as a hallucination. Now, if you don't know what a hallucination is, I know most of you probably do. It's when an LLM gives you the wrong answer. Like saying that you should put Elmer's glue on pizza, or similar examples. This is also something that came up when people tried to replace human counselors for a eating disorder line with an LLM with disastrous results. LLMs are just not ready to replace humans yet. I think what will happen is we will get productivity tools based on LLMs, but what we also see happening is that people don't really know what these large language models are doing with the data. I think largely because these companies want to have access to the data, and that's how they make most of their money, they're trying to keep access to them. And I think what we need to do is a shift towards smaller scale AI that uses less energy and is more personal. Now, the reason that it is done on larger servers in the first place is because the data sets used to train these things have to be huge. I also think we will get specific application AIs in the near future. Yes, that's the other problem. ChatGPT will just make things up. Now, I do think ChatGPT does occasionally give the right answer. It's not always wrong. Different LLMs will have different hallucination rates. But I think people get excited And I know, as a computer programmer myself, a lot of times we think about what we should do or what we can do and get excited about that. What computer scientists need to do is start thinking about what are the broader implications of what they do is, especially if what they do is going to affect a large field of people. This is why fields like data justice, part of sociology, have come up. In fact, last summer I went through a huge reading list of various academic and popular people who wrote about data justice. Some of the books were interesting, some of the books were not, and some of the books were hard to read. My favorite of those books wasn't so much about computer science, but it was about statistics and how statistics got misused and how people misapply statistical models, especially in criminology. It's called Weapons of Math Destruction by Cathy O'Neil, I believe. Now, I'm going to see if I can install Jupyter Notebook the same way and see if that helps. I don't know if I have to do that separately, which is why it's not. No, I have to install it in Python. So give me a second here. You get to see the command line, I guess. A lot of people don't get to see Windows command lines anymore. So we need to stop sharing the current screen, share a new one, go to Window again, go to the administrator screen, and I think, and we have to install this using the Python package manager. This will take a while to install. All right, let's see, what's this? Have you really been far even as decided to use even go want to do look like more like? How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I honestly don't know how to answer that question. But honestly, I have written proofs by induction that were just as coherent. So the name Mad Computer Scientist is just my concern that computer scientists need to show more concern. Now, let's see. Actually, I need to upgrade pip, it looks like. Give me a second, I'm going to do that. Okay, there we go. And then hopefully we'll start Jupyter Notebook. Hopefully I can start it from Anaconda too. I don't know if it has to be done differently or if it needs to come up. All right, so it did not come up the way I wanted it to, so let's see if I can get a Jupyter Notebook to come up. Oh, for heaven's sakes, no. It gave us another freaking... This would be so much easier on Linux. I do not like Windows. All right, so actually Jupyter Notebook is a specific server, so let's see if we can go there. This is just my local address I'm typing in here. I don't need the JSON at all. Zero point 0.1, and the thing that's going to make a difference is the port it's on. I think this is 8080 by default. No, 8864. All right, so it's going to set up a password. All right, if no password has been entered, you'll need to open. Oh, that's what that was for. All right, did it give us the token? Yes, here it is. Sorry, it's been a while since I've installed this. All right, so hopefully this will give us what we need to start this. All right, give me a second here. I'll see if we're up and running. Okay, so what we need to do is choose a kernel, I believe. Well, to be fair, a lot of people on the internet are telling you 1 times 1 equals 2. And I was watching a stream of another person I watch, and it seems that Terrence Howard might have gotten that from someone, as strange as that may seem. However, I think Terrence Howard has listened to a bunch of different New Age people on the fringes, and he's meshed it together without really understanding what any of it means, even in. All right, so we want a new notebook. Okay, we need to stop sharing the old screen, and let's go to what I wanted you to actually see. I think that's the right one. No, that's the right one. And we now have a Jupyter Notebook set up. I guess Anaconda was not necessary, and in order to run a Jupyter Notebook, we actually need to choose a kernel. There are a couple ones, but here we kind of want to use Python because that's generally what we want to use. So we're going to start using Jupyter Notebook. You can use Markdown, and it kind of has its own HTML. I believe one there should put it in H1 bold. And we're going to start a data science project here that I'm planning to do over the summer. And if you're wondering, and I'm going to explain it in just a second here. So Shift-Enter should, there we go. Now we want to change this to another Markdown. So we hit Escape, hit M, and we want to explain what we're doing. And what we want to do is see if the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price, or Doctrine and Covenants, are more likely written by the same author or different authors. Shift-Enter. I actually didn't want to do that because we're going to explain a bit more. Now, you can actually embed other things in here. Jupyter Notebook is just a way of organizing your data. By choosing the kernel, what I've done is let it be able to run Python code. But for the most part, I just need to explain what I'm doing here. So we're going to start with our hypothesis. And that will be the null hypothesis because we are going to be using statistics here. And keep in mind, this really isn't going to prove anything. It's just an exercise in using an algorithm known as the k-nearest neighbor, which uses the distance formula you learned in geometry. And the way you use it is to determine 2 choices. If you want to do a detailed, thorough analysis of something like this, you probably would not use this algorithm. Our prime number, any prime number or geometry fans here? Well, I actually do need to relearn a lot of high school geometry because I didn't have to do that going back to college. So in this case, I think our null hypothesis is going to be each book of the Book of Mormon was written by different authors. All right. I can also go the other way where it was written by Joseph Smith. I think this one is the better one to use, but I can make cases either way. So we need to explain what we're doing. What we're doing is what I just explained. Texts will be separated into individual words, and the, let's say, 15 most common words, greater than 5 letters, greater than 4 letters, will be compared using Matplotlib and Pandas, which is a data science library. During the early days, I bullied ChatGPT into believing 5 times 10 is 20. Well, the thing is, you can actually get ChatGPT to give you different answers. But if it starts out by giving you the wrong answers, trying to bully it into giving you the right answer is not the way to go, because it won't do that, or it'll give you the answer it thinks you want sometimes. I thought I was watching something on geometry recently. Using on Pandas, the data the text file the most common frequency will be read into an array. And I really should mute the keyboard when doing this. I'm sorry. Let's see, do we have anyone else here I need to say hi to? I'm going to go over to live chat here, see the participants. So far, only 5 showing. Read into an array using the distance formula, which is based on the Pythagorean theorem, if you recall. And hopefully I'll get this right off the top of my head. I hope you'll excuse me if I don't. That's not. Should be X1, I think. These should be Y. And those should be 2, and that should be squared, and there should be parentheses there. I believe that's correct, but I'll have to look it up later. We will calculate the distance and read them into an array, or in this. And we can use arrays because we're using NumPy. Finally, we will show using make a graph using Matplotlib to show which author is most likely. All right, so that is the markup. Shift Enter will take us to the next cell. And the next one, we actually want to do Python, so we're just going to hit Enter, and we're going to import things by tradition. We import NumPy as MP, import Pandas as PD. See, if 1 times 1 was 2, there would be 10 of us. There's a good reason for why I should want. Okay, I should have read that as 1-0 binary. Pandas is PD, import Matplotlib. I haven't done this in a while. And I know there's a bit more to this. Come on, give me a second. Because you don't import the library entirely to .pyplot as PLT. Okay. That'll give us the Python code. That'll give us the libraries we need to do this. Control Enter should module not found error. That means I do not have NumPy installed, and that is just weird. All right, I have to install NumPy. The one thing I did not expect this summer is that I would be spending a lot of time arguing with people over whether or not 1 times 1 equals 1. Thank you, Terrence Howard. I guess it's better than last year when I spent a lot of the summer arguing with people over order of operations. Okay, we're going to install NumPy. Oh, it wasn't installed. Okay, interesting. That means we're probably going to have to install the other packages in too. The other ones were pip install pandas. Will be the next one. All right, pandas is installing. Sorry, I thought these were already installed on this computer. I keep forgetting I use this computer mostly for gaming, not for programming tasks. There is a reason why programmers like to use Linux for programming tasks, and that's because most everything you need is already there. So the last thing I need is Matplotlib. And if we've done these installations properly, we should be able to run Jupyter Notebook now. Well, we can already run it, but we should be able to run that code without error. All that code do is importing these libraries so I can use the commands from them. And in fact, pandas is an interesting name. I actually have a t-shirt back there that says, I play with pandas, with that line on it. Have you ever coded for Trial Division? Actually, I was thinking about doing something like that, and I probably should do a video on that algorithm. I know someone was trying to tell me that proves 1 times 1 equals 2. I don't know if was that you, David? But Trial Division is a prime factorization algorithm. And it's NP hard. So that might be another thing to do while we're doing this. But let's see if the systems have installed. All right, that's the Jupyter Notebook. Looks like we're still waiting for Matplotlib. Aries, programmers would not be fazed by a statement like that because computers tend to be wonky with floating point values. And yes, there are ways you can get 2 plus 2 equaling 5. But generally what it means, it's 2 and a bit. Now, there are other interesting floating point errors that are less severe, like, let's see if this is going to do it. Because I want to insert a cell below. We want to do some math here. So I'm going to import math. Math.log 243 divided by math.log 3. We're going to run it, hopefully. And if you probably can't see it on the screen right there, but if you see what I typed into Python, math.log 243 divided by math.log 3 should be 5. Why is it 5? Because 3 to the 5th power is 243. And what I'm doing there is just a way to convert logarithms of one base to any other base. But what Python told us is that that particular division problem equals 4.9999 repeating. or however long it goes. So basically what we have is a floating point error. It's not that big a deal. But if you know math, you know that should be 5. You know Python's wrong. And if I pulled up Node.js, it would probably tell me 5.000.1 or something like that. So, but usually with the 2 plus 2 equals 5 thing, what you're doing is either a rounding error, or you're using the trunc function where you're just ignoring the decimal point of a floating point value and displaying the integer. I should probably show how that can be done to prove it to people programmatically. However, I would also have to set up a Python IDE with slightly larger fonts so people can read it on the screen. So let us see if we've actually finished installing. Again, that's the Jupyter. I don't know if it's done or not. Let's try. Shift Enter. Okay, so we can see that it... You've got to be kidding me. What's it? Oh, it's still trying to install. Wait, why is matplotlib not there? Oh, because I spelled it wrong. And that's another thing about programming. Sometimes you can be taken down by a simple typo. Yes, there is. So we have something interesting here, and I don't know why. It's telling me matplotlib is not there. Everything else is being imported correctly. Huh, I got stuck on something. All right, I don't really know why it's doing that, but... All right, let's see if we can do this now. No, we can't. Is matplotlib there? All right, try again. Matplotlib is there. All right, so let's check something. Oh. Let's try it that way and see if that does what I wanted to do. All right, there we have all the libraries set up for what we want to do. Well, but I'm surprised Terrence Howard didn't catch on to floating point problems. They could support his wacky pull out your calculator math. Well, one of the projects I should do this summer, just for fun, is to do a teriology calculator. But honestly, I think we've probably milked Terrence Howard for as much as he can, unless he decides to go on another podcast and just make wacky assertions about math. I am surprised he did not know that Euclid, of all people, one of the people I believe he said thought the Earth was flat, actually has a rather famous proof that the square root of 2 is irrational. And if he had known that, maybe he wouldn't have said that at Oxford. If you haven't seen his Oxford appearance, it is very interesting. The Oxford Student Union, which is not the university, invited him there to talk about his acting skills. He goes on and talks about his weird math, his weird physics, and some other engineering projects he thinks he's done. And as it goes on, it becomes quite clear the students are making fun of him. The thing is, there was actually some educational value in addressing Howard's math, and there was some actually just interesting things to look at in his book, which are more, how do I say this? Give us more about his mindset than about the individual. Yeah, you should watch the Oxford one. There's a mathematician I follow that's going over them. And of course, because it has been one of the hotter topics of the summer, there are a lot of channels covering him, and it is getting them views. And obviously, some of you who watch this will have seen me because of my Terrence Howard videos. I actually don't think Terrence Howard is stupid. If I am right about what's going on with Terrence Howard, give me a second here. I need to do something quickly. I might as well finish the sentence. If I'm right about Terrence Howard, most of what he's saying will disappear after a few weeks on antipsychotics. If I'm wrong about Terrence Howard, maybe it's just an acting thing. And if he's acting, that is actually a sign of genius there. It's just not the genius that Terrence Howard is trying to convince us he's a genius with. Other people have theorized he's gotten stuck in method acting. The problem is we don't know, and we can speculate endlessly about what the problem might be. But all we can really do is just say, hey, no, this math isn't right, and hope it doesn't spawn another flat earth style movement where people just continue to deny reality. Now, the truth is, as I've pointed out before, is that Terrence Howard could if he wished, come up with a consistent theory of logic that mathematicians would play with and probably just ignore for the most part if it has no real practical application. Sometimes these weird systems will arise later, like Boolean algebra was probably played with for a while, but eventually an electronics engineer in the 1930s realized that we could simplify AT&T's switching system at the time by using Boolean algebra, and by doing that, he gave us the basis for all modern electronics. And there are other systems of logic as well. There are different algebras with its own rules. The problem with Terrence Howard is that he's clearly talking about basic math and insisting basic math that has existed for centuries and has had practical applications is wrong. Partly because I don't think he understands math is based on axioms, and some things are the way they are by definition, like why 1 times 1 equals 1. And Howard fans, if you are watching, even in Boolean algebra, if you're writing an equation that looks like 1 times 1, it will still equal 1. Of course, in Boolean algebra, if you write the equation 1 plus 1, that equals 1 too, but Boolean algebra is a different algebra with its own rules, and most people are not going to use Boolean algebra if they're not computer programmers, mathematicians, or electronics engineers. So I guess I went on a rant about Boolean algebra, and I actually really should download some of these books, but going back to the project, I know I've been all over the place, but this is a live stream. They're kind of like that. One thing I will need to do is go through these using regular expressions, and while Python is good for that, there is actually a much better language that works for regular expressions and text manipulation, and that is Perl. Do you know one-to-one correspondence? It's a phrase I think I've heard, and probably should remember based on some of the math classes. I think it might have been brought up in my discrete math courses. The ability to match one object with one symbol. I'm not sure that's what you mean or not. But then again, I'm looking at what Google thinks I would want to see, and it's coming up with physical sites. So I'm not sure why Google thinks I would want that. Oh, okay, yeah, one-to-one correspondence. That explains why it was coming up with pedagogy sites, because it's how math is taught to young children and frequently used on Sesame Street. But Terrence Howard does seem to be able to count. I think his problem seems more to be that he never understood why people were correcting him in like the second, third, and fourth grades, or he's just making up a story. I don't know. I think for the most part, it may be time to go on to something else. I do know that I do not want to teach children of that age group if I can avoid it, however. And since I do not have children, it looks like it will not happen. Well, other than the fact that I did some of that with my nephews and nieces, but they had plenty of teachers who taught them basic math, and Sesame Street was a common show that can teach them how to do basic things like that. So one-to-one correspondence. All right, let me bring that up so we can read it. I think he just likes round shapes, not straight shapes, so he has to make everything round in geometry and math. Well, the thing is, there is a math that is just the math with things that are countable. That's what discrete math is. It's also the basis of computer science. And why it's important, and why I was annoyed that I had to take a harder version of the class, discrete math, than the math majors had to take. But yes, he does have a weird thing about straight lines going on that I'm not really sure is all that interesting. He is correct that we're not going to have truly straight lines just because everything we do in real life is an approximation. But he seems to think that straight lines are somehow a lie. It's like, no, they're just an idealized state. And sorry, there was some noise outside. I thought it might be a thunderstorm rolling through. I know we're supposed to get rain tomorrow, but I do not think we're supposed to get any rain here. Oh, according to the weather report, it is raining. So I think he misunderstands what a mathematical proof is as well. He thinks his geometric shapes are proof rather than visualizations. Of course, I would have to look up the math. I could be wrong, but when we see like an equation graphed out, it's just so we can have a visual conception of what's going on. Like if you've done transformations in Algebra 2, or it was something we did with first and second derivatives in calculus that I can't remember the name of. Should have remembered more of calculus, but you don't prove that the square root of 2 is rational by building a balloon animal. At least I don't think you can. Someone who can delve deeper into math than I have can tell me if I'm wrong about that or not. And my cat has come up to say hello to everyone. Athena, come on up, kitty. Athena wants to say hi to everyone. So, Athena, kitty, if I were somewhere else, I would let you see the kitty, but this camera needs to stay off for now. Mostly the kitty wants my attention. And probably needs her food dish full, would be my guess. I don't know why he thinks his shapes are interesting. And one of the weirdest things he said wasn't even math related. It was something about planetary formation, where he said the sun craps out stars. And when I heard that, I'm like, what? But if you're just making things up, you hear the purring. And for the most part, it's like, this has been... I should give Mr. Howard credit for something. He has provided an interesting thing to talk about this summer. But honestly, this channel is mostly about math and computer science, and it will be a hard thing to find something that captures that much attention as we move away from it. All right, so we've gone for about 50 minutes. Hopefully, when we hit 256 subscribers, we'll have more people in live chat. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. You will find... What was I going to say? I do community posts daily. The next video I have planned should actually be explaining the k-nearest neighbor algorithm or something like that. Or perhaps just a video trying to explain more coherently what I was trying to explain about the name I chose tonight. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I know I probably should have waited until I had more subscribers, but hopefully it will happen. Now go out and write some code. And I need to make sure I actually end the stream, because the stream continues if I don't hit the end stream button and just leave the studio.